Data in research. Today we'll be talking about the processes in data collection. Now, based on the definition, data collection is the process of gathering and measuring information on targeted variables in an established systematic function. I'd like you to focus on this term systematic and established, meaning to say when you conduct data or data collection, you have to follow a systematic way of doing it. You cannot undergo data collection without specifying the different steps in the conduct of it. You have to ensure that the processes are established. At the same time, the process that is being undertaken is valid and able to capture and gather the target information to answer the target problem. Now, this is the process of gathering and measuring information, meaning to say this is very vital in the conduct of research because without data collection, we cannot get the information that we will be needing in interpreting and even in answering our statement of the problem. This is the process that will allow us answer our problem. This will lead us into the solution. This will lead us into the results that will give view of the concerns being addressed and being raised. It is a component of research in all fields of study, which includes physical, social sciences, humanities, and business. Now, I'd like you to focus on this, that while methods differ by discipline, the importance of collecting accurate and honest data remains in place. So regardless of the disciplines that you are pursuing, regardless of the disciplines you are in, but when you conduct research on these different disciplines, the purpose and the intention is still the same, and that is to get accurate, honest data that would help interpret the result. Now, the goal of all data collection is to capture quality evidence that allows analysis to the formulation of convincing and credible answers to the questions that have been posed. So, meaning to say, the intention really of the data collection is to capture quality evidence. I'd like you to zero into this, the quality evidence, because you will be needing this one in interpreting your result. Without ensuring the correctness, accuracy, and validity of your data, you may lead to a questionable result. That's why you have to capture quality evidence. There should be an evidence of the results, meaning to say you need this process, you need this section to get quality evidence. You've been needing this one, especially in the process of getting and analyzing the results, because you will be going there from time to time. You'll be checking your notes, you'll be checking your data, gathered data for you to really ensure validity and credibility of the result. Now, let's proceed. What is the importance of um, what is the importance of survey? Oops. Okay. We have here the importance of accuracy in data collection. Why it's important that you have to ensure that the data collected are accurate and valid. Now, despite of the variation in the field of study or preferences for defining data, it may be quantitative or qualitative, still accurate data collection is essential to maintaining the integrity of research. So meaning to say, for you to ensure that there is integrity in your research, you have to really present that the data collected is accurate. Because later on, when you fail to establish the accuracy and the integrity of your research, then the results of your research will be questioned, right? Now, both the selection of appropriate data collection instruments, it might be the existing instruments, or you modify it, or you develop one new one, and clearly delineated instructions for the correct use reduce the likelihood of errors or occurring. So meaning to say you have to use appropriate data collection instruments. The instrument really is very vital, especially in the data collection process, because this will lead to the information that you'll be needing in answering your statement of the problem. So if you fail to establish appropriateness in the instrument that you'll be using, then there will be now question in the validity of your results. There will be now errors in the results because the questionnaire and then the statement of the problem did not match. Okay, so it might be existing if there will be existing research instruments that you can utilize if you are doing a parallel study or similar study. Then it would be very better if you can just download the instruments, but then you have to notify the author that you'll be using that instruments, right? However, if you want to modify something from that existing instrument, then you have to still do the validity check of it, and then you have to get it validated and interpreted and validated and checked by the experts or do pilot testing to really ensure accuracy in the study. Now, if you want to develop new instruments, you have to have it pilot tested. Alright? So what do you mean by pilot tested? It means that you are going to have it done in a separate sample that with the same questions, and then you check the convex alpha of it so that you can get the validity, the, the percentage of the validity of your instrument. But for qualitative research, the way of validating your study is to have it, of course, pilot tested, still to a different sample. All right? So that's it. Next, a formal data collection process is necessary as it ensures that the data gathered are both defined and accurate, and that subsequent decisions based on arguments embodied in the findings are valid. So formal data collection process is very necessary, no? Since it assures that the data gathered are defined and accurate. So wag nating madaliin yung collect natin ng data kasi napakahalaga nito na process. If there are errors and there's question in how you collected the data, then uulitin mo lahat. Kasi magkakaroon siya ng bias, magkakaroon siya ng ang issue ngayon sa results, no? So it will be a waste of time. So to really ensure na okay yung ano natin, then you have to follow what is set and what is established protocols for it. Next, the process provides both baseline from which to measure and in certain cases an indication of what is to improve. Now, after crafting your instruments and do pilot testing or do validating of your instruments, you will see there what are the things to be improved, what are the things to be modified so that validity is really achieved. Now, what are the consequences of improper collecting of data? So we have here inability to answer research questions accurately, of course. If you use wrong method in collecting your data, then your research questions or there will be inability to answer research questions. Of course, no, hindi masasagutan yung dapat sagutan kasi nga mali yung ginamit na data natin. For instance, if your study is um, you wanted to get the performance level of the senior high school. Now, instead of getting the data of it, you just do the survey. Nag-survey ka lang kung anong grades nila. So that's actually a question, no, in the process of collecting the data because it's inaccurate. So that it's not proper. So there should be established procedure in the conduct of uh, data gathering. Now, inability to repeat and validate the study, distorted findings resulted in wasted resources. This is what I'm talking about. No, that when you follow or do improper data collection, then you will be wasting your resources because hindi mag-match yung answer natin, hindi tama yung process na natin. So when we present it to the big audience, then mako-question yung validity ng results natin kasi nga mali yung process na ginamit natin, no? So distorted findings, and then of course you'll be wasting resources because you're gonna repeat the process again just to arrive into more valid and more accurate results. Misleading other researchers to pursue fruitless avenues of investigation, compromising decisions for public policy, and causing harm to human participants and animal subjects. So, you have to be very careful in the conduct of your research because there might be a tendency that you will be misleading other researchers when you present the results because you wanted to achieve really good and more interesting results, but then in the process you fail to establish the correct process of getting the data, and then you just present there your results because behind your mind you wanted to really make your research interesting, you really wanted to make your results more enticing to the public. However, it mislead other researchers, so you have to be very careful because you have to, your credibility, your integrity, your being um, being questioned when you is at stake when you present questionable research. You also compromise decisions for public policy. Now, especially if your study is sensitive and it will really help the public, or it will really help department or appropriate institutions to make policy. However, you modify it, you fail to undergo correctness in the process of conducting or collecting data. So you compromise the decisions. So there will so sayang siya. Okay, next, sayang kasi maaaring magamit yung results mo for policy making, policy pitch. Okay. Now, causing harm, ito talaga, no, causing harm to human participants. Because if hindi tama yung process natin, hindi na-establish, maaaring makakause ng harm sa participants natin, no? That's why in the conduct of research, transparency is very important. You really have to present your intention, how you're gonna conduct the study, how you're gonna do it, how you're gonna interpret it, what are the things needed, what information will be collected, the limitation, the scope of your study, all of it has to be mentioned to really protect your participants, especially if your participants are human and vulnerable and belong to vulnerable group. Okay? So you have to protect your participants. That's why data collection is very important. You have to really ensure that the ethical issues of it are being addressed before you're gonna pursue your data collection. Okay, there are two types of data. First one is the primary data, and the second one is the so-called secondary data. Now, what is the distinction between these two? Primary data means the original data that has been collected specifically for the purpose in mind. So it means that someone collected the data from the original source firsthand, meaning to say these are firsthand information being collected by maybe an authorized organization, an investigator or researcher, enumerator, or they may be just someone with a clipboard. So meaning to say these are data being collected through interview, through survey. So these are first-hand data. Now, what do you mean by secondary data? How it differs from the primary data? The secondary data refers to the data which is collected by someone who is someone other than the user. So meaning to say these are data taken from the study of someone or a data taken from a survey of some organizations, and you utilize it to really maximize the results of your study or to strengthen the results of your study. Common example of this are like if you wanted to know how many married people living in that area, so instead of doing a manual gathering of data, why not just ask an organization who have this data of how many married people in the community, how many belong to the age, particular age, or how many are professionals in that particular area. So we have that in our community. We have organizations taking care of it. So instead of doing or instead of conducting it manually, why not just ask this information from appropriate organizations? So that's secondary data. Now, when you do that one, secondary data analysis can save time, of course. You can save time because at the same time, you can save money because you will no longer go to the community to do manual survey, but you can just eventually ask someone to provide you the data, provided that it's approved and has no legal implications. And legal implications or legal concerns or issues are being taken care of. Now, what are the methods of primary data collection? We have there observation, survey, and contact method, and experimental method. All right, now let's have here the observation method. This is commonly used in behavioral sciences. Okay, um, actually, the observation method is very common in I'm not saying that's limited only to qualitative research, especially if you are conducting a phenomenological research, because from time to time you'll be observing your participants, their reaction, their gestures, because you'll be taking field notes. Okay, but if sabi nga nito, it is the gathering of primary data by investigators on direct observation to relevant people. Example of which here is a hotel chain sends observers posing as guests into its coffee shop to check on cleanliness and customer service. Now, why we are doing observation? In research, we call it uh, um, we do triangulation method to really ensure validity and reliability of our study. Because survey alone cannot stand, no, when you conduct research, and there might be things that cannot be captured using survey, so it would be better if you do observation. The observation will support the findings. At the same time, it will um, give justice to the results. You as an investigator will be able to expound things that are not captured in the survey. So the triangulation there is you do the survey, you do the observation, and you support it with a theory. So that is triangulation. You triangulate the result. So by doing it, it makes your research more substantial, more rich, at the same time, more reliable. Alright? So nakuha. But I'm not, as what I have said, it's not limited only to qualitative, but it's also can be done in the quantitative research, especially in the experimental research, in what else? Yeah, experimental. Usually this is done for the experimental research, no? Like you observe the reaction of a certain person based on the intervention and so on and so forth. So we do observation. In the mixed method, in the experimental research, this is very important, observation. The one who's doing it should be mastered. The one who's doing it should be equipped so that all aspects, all elements present that may have an effect, an impact to the totality of the result are being addressed. Alright? Intindihan? Okay, so let's proceed. Now, we have different types of observation, which later on we are going to discuss it. Structured, this is for descriptive research, and structured, is for exploratory research. We also have participant observation, non-participant observation, and disguised observation. Like made mention kanina, yung hotel guest nga, who disguised as a guest but he is really a researcher, observing, no? So yun siya. So that's ano siya, no? Next is structure. This is yung mayroon na talaga siyang tawag nito, like how many minutes siya mag-observe, anong dapat yung observe, mga elements present there, the time, the situation, the condition, the weather, so on and so forth, the person conducting it, the materials needed for it are being established. Kaya structured siya. Okay? We also do participant observation and non-participant observation. But we have to note that there are limitations on it. So because of these limitations, researchers often supplement observation with survey research. Ito yung sabi ko, no? Kasi nga may mga hindi ma-capture sa observation, kailangan natin invalidate. Bakit mataas? Ano nangyari? Bakit mataas yung level of anxiety ng mga young people? Anong problema? So, mayroon yung siyang survey, and then you're gonna support it with observation. Now, feelings, beliefs, and attitudes that motivate buying behavior and infrequent behavior cannot be observed, and it's expensive. Yun yung observation. Expensive siya. Kasi kailangan mo talaga mag-invest, no? Okay. Next. Proceed tayo. We have here the different survey, no? Survey method. First is we have this approach is most suited for gathering descriptive information. Survey nga siya kasi descriptive. You have this list of questions that has to be answered. So we have here structured survey. This is a formal list of questions asked to all respondents in an identical set. So meaning to say, even if you have a large large number of population, you will be using the same list of questions that they have to answer. So, yung tinatawag dito, in an identical set. Okay? So, like, if your survey is about the job satisfaction, so you will be producing a questionnaire for it that will really get the job satisfaction of all employees in General Santos City for a particular institution. So that is structured kasi naka-structure siya. No? Meron siyang sinusunod. You cannot add or you cannot omit something from it. And that's it. What is written should be answered. What is written should be followed. So that's structured. Now, when you say unstructured, this is the total opposite of the structured. The interviewer here probes the respondents and guides the interview according to their answers. So the unstructured usually done in the qualitative research when you want to explore something, you want to get a certain phenomenon, you want to do exploratory research, you do case analysis, and so on. So you do unstructured survey wherein the interviewer guide, no, or give questions, and then from the answer of the participants, another questions may be formulated or can be formulated. So that's unstructured survey. Now, another one is the so-called direct approach. This is the researcher asks direct questions about the behavior and thoughts. Example of this: why don't you eat at McDonald's? So that's direct approach. But there are cases that topics are sensitive, questions are sensitive, issues are sensitive, so it may be safe to ask it in direct way. Like here, the researcher might ask what kind of people eat at McDonald's. Notice here, although two different approach, but will lead to the same answers. So from the response, the researcher may be able to discover why the consumer avoid McDonald's. So pwedeng sabihin natin, why don't you eat at McDonald's? Maybe some of the answers is that because it's expensive, because the options are limited, maybe if this answer. And then when asking also what kind of people eat at McDonald's, you say, I think people who will be eating at McDonald's are rich, are non-pork eater, and so on and so forth. So from there, you can have a common or similar answer to the direct approach, no? So ito sabi ko, pwede natin gamitin itong indirect approach, especially pag medyo sensitive na, no? So we have to be very careful of the words that we'll be using in conducting research. It should not be, you know, it should not be kanang not it should not be confusing. At the same time, it should not be hindi siya dapat mag-prejudice. There should hindi ma-sacrifice ang one party, no? So prejudice must be avoided. So hindi siya mabilital, yan ma-feel on kanang hurt, no? So you have to really protect the feelings of your participants. Okay, now what are the advantages of this? Can be used to collect different kinds of information at the same time when you do survey, no? Is pwede mo man siyang like you wanted to know how many are Globe users in the area, so you can do it at the same time. Just produce a questionnaire, distribute it, so you can do, uh, you can collect different types of information at the same time. It's quick also and low cost because you can just have it downloaded or have it done online, and then the materials needed also very affordable compared to doing observation and experiment, because will be there are so many things that you have to consider when you do observation, because you have to be present there, you have to observe, you have to be very careful if other elements are not being addressed, you have to do it again and again, just to really achieve to the purpose that you have set. All right. Now, for the experimental as well, ito yung sabi ko, ang dami mong dapat gawin, dami mong dapat i-observe, and the elements present, that these are the intervening variable presents that you have to address to really ensure validity of results. Like, tama ba yung temperature, tama ba yung anong time mo ito i-conduct, sino nag-conduct, ang materials ginamit, and so on and so forth. Okay, now, although it has these advantages, it also has limitations, like respondents' reluctance to answer the questions. Kasi, di ba, pag mag-survey ka, minsan hesitant ka magsagot, no? Because hindi nga na-establish ang rapport. Sa survey, hindi siya ganun na dapat may rapport na na-establish, no? Kasi very shallow nga yung information na kukunin mo. You don't need to dig things, don't need in-depth interview compared to qualitative. So yun siya. So there might be tendency that respondents will really not give you the correct answer or the answer that should be needed, no? Or tendency also is that the respondents may refuse to answer. Yan. Respondents may refuse to answer because of the busy schedule, or respondents may try to please only by sharing positive responses. Ayan, may limitation na. No? Diba, na-notice natin yan? I guess you can relate to this when you ask to do survey or ask to answer survey questions, diba minsan hindi natin binabasa yung mga questions kasi nga, ano man to, parang I don't see the importance of it. Parang hindi mo siya, very siya sa'yo, like inconvenient. So, the tendency is, sasagutan mo siya without understanding really the real meaning of the questions. Yun. No? Okay, respondents may answer in order to look smart or well-informed. So, ito yung mga limitations. Now, we also have here contact methods, may questionnaires. Ito yung ginagamit natin. We don't actually do mailing kasi ngayon email na, no? But ito yung ginagawa natin. Minsan, we can do it, no? We actually had it done with my advisee last semester. So advantages can be used to collect large amount of information at low cost per respondent kasi you don't need to, print materials for the survey. You can just have it done using Google Form or any platform where you can collect information, or you can post your questions and be answered by your participants, no? For a low cost. Now, respondents may give more honest answers to personal questions and mail questionnaire kasi hindi naman nila nakikita kung sino nagtatanong. And then their identity also are being hidden. So maybe they can give you honest questions or honest answers. No interviewer is involved to bias the respondent's answer kasi it's done online. So, kasi minsan pag nandyan si interviewer, nai-intimidate si participants, no? So, nagkakaroon ng bias yung result. Or nai-influence ni researcher yung answer ni respondents. So, kaya dito, advantage siya kasi wala si interviewer. Okay, now, convenient for respondents who can answer when they have time. It's very convenient because they can answer the questions anytime they want, so long as they're available. Now, good way to reach people who often travel. Yeah, because you can just send them the link and have access on it and answer the questions whenever they want. Now, although it has advantages, it also has limitations. It's not flexible. Yeah, take longer to complete than telephone or personal interview. Because why take longer? Because the participants have the luxury to when no, to choose or to decide when to answer the question. You cannot force them to answer the question. What you can only do is to follow up if they have answered the questions posted. Okay, response rate is often very low kasi nga hindi nila nakikita. Yung, wala naman akong nakukuha dito sa survey na ito. Kaya nga di ba sa YouTube nga, di ba may mga ganun, they can wherein nag-ano sila ng survey, then the tendency na ginagawa natin, ginaskip natin yung survey. So, yun din yung feeling ng mga participants natin when we ask them to answer our questions. So, tendency niyan, hindi nila sinasagutan. No? Ito, we really find it very difficult yung when we had this tracer study where we are asked to get all the status of our graduates for 5 years from 2017 to 2022. Although they have, we really maximize the utilization of social media, but still the responses from the participants very limited. Kasi nga, yun, sabi natin, the response rate is very low. Hindi mo man talaga sila ma-force. Ayan, no? And then they have the luxury to say no or to not participate to the survey. At the researcher has no control over who answer. Ito yung limitation kasi hindi mo nakikita sino yung nagsagot. Pwede naman niya ibigay, sagutan mo man ito, friend, or sagutan mo man ito. So you don't have any way of validating who is answering the questions. Yun yung mga limitations. Okay. Next is the telephone. Now, let's see kung mas okay ba ang telephone kaysa sa mail. Okay. The telephone actually is more quick than the tawag nito, mail. Because ang telephone, nakakausap mo. No? So, pag may magsagot, meaning to say may nag-participate. That's another participants added to the list. Okay, so more flexible as the interviewer can explain questions not understood by the respondents. Ayan. So depending on the respondent's answer, they can skip some questions and probe more on others, allowing greater sample control and response rate tends to be higher than mail. Kasi nga, di ba, pag mag-ring na like, hello, is this Miss Jane? Can I have a quick interview with you, ma'am? Blah, 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 so on and so forth. So from that moment, you can easily ask the participants, you can easily ask the respondents, no, to answer a specific question. So, mas madali siya. So, the rate is higher. No, kasi alam mo na pag may nagsagot, may tao, may nag-participate. Ayan. And then, alam mo din na siya yun. Okay. Limitations, cost per student is higher kasi kailangan mo magbayad ng load. Ayan. So, some people may not want to discuss personal cues with, interview questions with, interviewer's manner of speaking may affect the respondent's answer. Kasi nga, di ba, minsan, depende sa tono ng pagsagot natin, like, pagpapasigaw, although, kasi hindi nga niya nakikita yung expression natin. So, yun yung mga limitations dito. So, depende kung paano mo sabihin yung word. Although, you have the same, you speak the same words, like pareho kayo ng sinabi, but the manner you say that word may have an impact or different implications to the receiver. Diba? Kasi may mga tao man talaga na pasigaw, kahit hindi naman siya galit, pasigaw talaga magsalita. Yun. So it may have an effect, it may affect the respondent's answer. Now, different interviewers may interpret and record the response in variety of ways, and under time pressure, data may be entered without actually interviewing. Yung mga limitations natin. Okay. Now, let's proceed to personal interviewing. It is very flexible and can also be used to collect large amounts of information. Now, skilled interviewers are able to keep the respondents attentive, clarify difficult questions in case of doubt. Ito yun siya, no? When you do personal interview, so if you are very skilled, talagang napaka advantage nun sa side ng researcher, no? Kasi you let the respondents be attentive, nakukuha mo yung attention nila, and the tendency also to clarify difficult questions. Alright? So they can guide interviews, explore issues, improve as the situation demands. No personal interview can be used in any type of question and can be conducted fairly quickly. Ito, we do personal interview when we do like mas maganda mag-personal interview, especially if your studies on live experiences. It's more on, especially in the ethnographic research, yung mga ganyan, you have to really do it personally, or you do itong phenomenological research, where you have to really observe the participants and so on, especially in case analysis, no? Case study. Alright, now here, the responses, behavior, and reactions can be put on record by the interviewer by making the products readily available, displays at convenient locations, and use of advertisement. Okay, now we have here types of interviewing. So we have first, intercept interviewing. What does it mean? This one is, it allows a researcher to reach known people in a shorter duration, but at the same time, it reaches out respondents whose details are not known. So, mean to say, yung bang kung sino yung kakasunod, parang ano lang, parang there's no talaga rapport, yung palang, yung sino lang yung nakita ng interviewer, no, na sasalubong niya or nakita niya. Interviewer has to make an effort to gain attention and cooperation from the respondents to assure up responses. So the interviews can be done at different locations like residences, offices, public spaces, shopping destinations. So parang ano lang talaga siya. It's somewhat similar to convenient sampling. Kasi yung sino nakikita mo, sino nakakasalubong mo, tinatanong mo. Kasi nga dito interviewing, no? So yan siya. So, hindi siya ganun ka-strong yung rapport and hindi ganun ka-prolong yung engagement ng researcher kang participants. So, what are the limitations of this? Interviewer may be forceful, yan, in getting responses modified as per the objective of the study. Kasi nga, gusto mong makakuha, but tendency kasi, di ba, pag ambush interview siya, the tendency maraming umiiwas. Kaya minsan naging forceful si interviewer. Ito yung limitation din niya. No? There's a possibility of an error and bias on the part of the interviewer who may not be able to correctly judge their religion, age, race, and etc. Ito siya kasi importante. Yan, no? Dapat kasi. Kaya, kung ano siya, pag not intercept interviewer, pag in-depth interview, hindi kasi ito in-depth eh. Parang ano lang siya eh, parang yun nga lang. Somewhat convenient interview lang. Kung sino nakikita, yun yung interview. So, interviewer may be uncomfortable talking to certain ethnic or age group. Ito yung mga limitations niya. Kasi wala kang background of your participants. No? So, yun siya. Magkakaroon siya minsan ng bias. Ito, focus group interviewing. Ito yung kagandahan when you do research kasi dami mong pwedeng gamitin. If you want your discussions to be rich, then you can also adapt this type of data process or data collecting process. You do focus group. No? As the term suggests, it is conducted within selected group of respondents where the strength of the group is choice of the interviewer. Okay? So, ang dami mo. Usually, when you do focus group, you collect all your participants, you do a group of people sitting in one room, talking about certain issue to make it really rich, no? So, but then you have to make the atmosphere cool, and respondents may offer snacks, parang ano lang talaga sila, para ma-relax sila so they can share, no? Or hindi masyadong stiff yung parang relax sila that they can really share freely, no? And share on what their views on certain issues. So the process begins with broad question before moving to the more specific issues. Ito siya. So may process yan. Usually, when you do focus group, mayroon yan siyang how you start it. So para siyang lesson planning, mayroon kang step by step na susundin. Parang guide mo lang by doing focus group. Kasi kung hindi din siya bigyan ng tamang proseso, sayang ng effort. No? So such activity helps in identifying issues and subject which may later be used in the conduct of study. Okay? Alright. Limitation, high cost. Bakit high cost? Kasi papakainin mo sila or you may have to rent an area for them or baka minsan pa ikaw pa yung magpamasahe. So, mga ganun, high cost. Depende sa usapan. Sampling is difficult, yeah. And then, interviewer, minsan may biases sa interview. Okay? Sige. Alright. So, next, experimental method. Okay. I know you're very familiar with this. Sabi nga natin, when we do experiment, no? It is also named empirical research or the cause and effect. Like for instance, if you wanted to know whether eating breakfast has impacted the performance of the students, so meron kang a selected group where you allow them to eat breakfast and then you're gonna measure afterward the performance in math ba perhaps or science. So yan. So titingnan natin kaya nga cause and effect yung other term of it kasi we wanted to know whether a specific intervention has an effect, no, to the sample. For instance, also another example of this is if you want to know whether flip or a certain strategy like classroom strategy or teaching strategy would modify or increase the behavior, capacity behavior of your students. Yan siya. Yun yung mga experiment, yan siya. So it is a database research resulting in conclusions that can be verified with observation. So kailangan talaga yung observation and or experiment. Okay, so mayroon tayong tinatawag na independent variable, mayroon din tayong tinatawag na dependent variable. I'm sure you are familiar with this, no? Kasi nadi-discuss ito sa types of research. Okay, so the effect of substituting one ingredient in whole or in part for another such as soya, flour, to flour for making high protein bread. Ito yun siya. Like, sa experiment na ito, kung gusto mong malaman kung mag-add ka, eto, example na lang nito, no, yung sa panahon nga ng COVID, di ba? Yung kasagsagan ng COVID, we have different vaccines being released and being injected to different participants. Yan. So, nag-experiment yun sila whether what vaccine is most effective in killing and destroying the virus. Yun. So, mayroon siyang, kung dagdagan nila ng dose ito, mas effective ba siya or not. So, that is experimental method. But in doing experimental method, you have to really ensure that all necessary things and clearances are undertaken and being observed, no? Dapat na talaga siya, satisfied talaga siya. Especially if your participants, if your sample are people, human. Okay, so yun lang siguro for now. And we're gonna discuss other things next meeting. Alright, so that's it. And please be excited. Just be excited for the continuation of this research. No, not research, of this lecture, of this lesson. Okay, thank you.